Hello, everyone, and welcome to NorthStar Community. As we do our weekly talks, I'm always so excited to do these and always so glad when people choose to come watch this. So, welcome, everyone. And we always are hoping that these will be blessings for you as you go through your week and through your life on your journey of recovery. And so, as we talk about here a lot, recovery is a wildly valuable, important thing to do, but it is also very difficult. It's very process oriented, means it takes time to get through it. And we have to have faith. We have to have enough faith in God to believe that we can overcome things that have become uncontrollable and unmanageable in our lives. And that's really kind of when we say we've crossed over from pre-step one to step one is when we finally do that. So that's really where I like to spend a lot of my time. Is just helping us to realize the things we need that's going on in our lives that helps us become more deeply aware of what's driving those things. And then hopefully we can figure out ways to move on and we move to a rich, full, meaningful life. And full of connection, full of love, full of faith, gratitude, purpose. I mean, all those things that really add up to a life. And the thing is with the rich, full, meaningful life, it doesn't mean our life suddenly becomes without problems, things that's not what happens. But we know how to manage things better. We respond more healthily to things. When we have issues come up, when we have bad things happen, hopefully because we're healthier, because we have purpose, because we have gratitude, we can respond in ways that helps reduce the bad times and helps us to really enjoy the good times. And during the normal routine kind of parts of our life that we can also have a better life there. So that's our goal here. So I always like to look at the Bible from a recovery point of view. And so we're going to look at, today we're going to look at Matthew 17. And so this is Jesus, again, with his disciples. And this is the famous line about if you had the faith of a mustard seed, you could tell this mountain to cast itself into the ocean and it would do that. So let's read this, but let's read the whole chapter here. At the bottom of the mountain, they were met by a crowd of waiting people. As they approached, a man came out of the crowd and fell to his knees begging, "Master, have mercy on my son. He goes out of his mind and suffers terribly, falling into seizures. Frequently he is pitched into the fire, other times into the river. I brought him to your disciples, but they could do nothing for him." So think about just the despair you've had in your life, or maybe if you have a child or something that's in addiction, just the despair, and you're asking people, what can I do? What can we do to save him? Or for yourself, what can I do to overcome these addictions? What can I do to overcome my past trauma, my high ACE score, all the effects of that? And nothing can be done. Jesus said, "What a generation. No sense of God. No focus to your lives. How many times do I have to go over these things? How much longer do I have to put up with this? Bring the boy here." He ordered the afflicting demon out, and it was gone. From that moment on, the boy was well. Sounds pretty good, doesn't it? And so we're not quite there, but Jesus made some statements here. So we have the very desperate father of a child who was definitely tormented. The disciples in their, they wanted to be there to deliver and they couldn't do it. They were just, you probably get a sense of a real failure, and they're just really taken aback and confused by it and hurt by it. And so then Jesus goes, "Come on, guys, where's your faith? Where did this generation, we're just so full of ourselves and materialism and all those things. We just can't get it." So sounds familiar, right? I think we can agree human behavior is human behavior. So then when the disciples had Jesus off to themselves, they asked, "Why couldn't we throw it out?" "Because you're not yet taking God seriously," said Jesus. The simple truth is that if you had a mere kernel of faith, a poppy seed, now other versions mustard seed, say, you would tell this mountain, "Move," and it would move. There's nothing you wouldn't be able to tackle. As they were regrouping in Galilee, Jesus told them, "The Son of Man is about to be betrayed to some people who want nothing to do with God. They will murder him, and 3 days later he will be raised alive." The disciples felt scared to death. Sorry about the dinging there. So when you think about this scripture, it certainly is a much bigger version of, I think we see the one about the mustard seed, but we forget to look at it from a bigger perspective, which is what we tend to do when we cherry pick scriptures by themselves. So basically the story here is someone, let me change the language here. So we have someone who is addicted, the demon of addiction. They cannot overcome this. It's destroying their lives. It's making their lives miserable. Everything that you don't want in your life is going on. The parent comes to these people who should be able to help here, and they don't. They can't do it. They try, but it doesn't work. So then Jesus lectures us about, come on, guys, you need to have more faith. You need to trust. You need to believe. But then what I think is important here at the end is Jesus then tells about his own impending death. And I think that's important because I think sometimes in America particularly, we get into these fourth grade views of God where, well, I'm a Christian now, everything's going to be great. And that's not true. And that Jesus is telling them this, it is going to be great. There's going to be pain in this first. But he's telling them to have enough faith. Believe in me, believe in the living Messiah, believe in the living God. And things will get better. And of course, we can't go with demon and addiction in every way, because in a demon situation, if these things were to happen, it would be sudden and immediate. I guess our sudden and immediate in addiction is when we go from pre-step one to step one, when we finally say, you know what, my life is out of control, my life is unmanageable, and my addictions are destroying me. So that is a sudden moment. But then it's a long process from there to really overcoming our addictions and to live a rich, full, meaningful life, as many of you know, as you sit here listening to this. So, but I just think it's important, again, that Jesus is talking about some very painful things that's going to happen to him. And I think we can read to that. It's also going to be to us as well. And, so I think what we have to figure out here is, so the title really today is Faith versus Tyrannical Misperceptions. So the disciples certainly were judging themselves, and they probably saw themselves as failures, all these things. But they did try. They had their hearts in the right place. They wanted to do what they should do, and it didn't work out for them. But they're in the right place. So that's important. So when we think about the tyrannical misperceptions, I always talk about Dr. Gerald Main, his book Addiction and Grace talks about the biggest lie we live is the lie that we are flawed, defective, we have low self-esteem, we loathe ourselves as addicts, we tend to loathe ourselves and hate ourselves. Yeah, we hide it with bravado, but the fact is we really hate ourselves. What a misperception, and what a tyrannical, awful judgment we make of ourselves, is that we are inherently bad. We are a flawed individual who doesn't deserve to do well, who is manipulative and lying and all those things. And so we have to keep remembering about this again. We keep talking about shame versus toxic shame. We need to have shame. When we do something wrong, we do need to feel bad about that because we don't want to do it again. But toxic shame is telling us that we are bad as a person, that we are inherently a terrible person. And that's what drives us so many times into the crazy, dysfunctional, angry life we live as addicts. And we withdraw from the good people. We hang with the ones that are broken like we are. We don't have purpose. We have survival. We don't live with gratitude. We live with resentment and anger. All those things. That is tyranny. That's the tyrannical misperceptions. And I think that one of the things that I like, Connor McGonigal wrote about was, he says, maybe we should just accept the fact that we're a piece of crap at some level. At least then we can start doing something. We can start doing something about this. Then we can start fixing things. But when we're living with this false sense of bravado and we're trying to convince everyone how good we are and how everybody else is the problem and, blah, 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 we're never going to get where we want to. So do we have enough faith to believe that God loves us? Do we have enough faith to believe that We don't have to be here where we are. I'm not saying you're going to just get out of your addiction right now, but for you that are on the journey, you know what it's like you experience some good times. You still experience cravings. You still want to go relapse and misbehave and do all those things. But hopefully there's enough in there that you can at least see what could be. And I think take the pressure off. You're not God. You're not perfect. You never will be perfect. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to be mean. You're going to get harmed by others. You're going to harm people. You're going to not do things you should do. You're going to do things you shouldn't do. All those things. But if your motive is right, that you're trying to do the right thing for the right reason, all the mistakes become less and they become less permanent. But if we keep on holding on to the toxic shame, then we're never going to get past this tyranny of misperceptions. And you think about what we've seen this in history. I think we saw a little bit in Iraq. We certainly read it in the Bible where the Jews, the Israelites were slaves, and then God frees them, and they're already kind of mourning for their past lives, as bad as it was, but at least they had security. They knew what was going on. And yeah, their life was terrible. They were being worked too hard and not, all the stuff that goes with being slaves. But the Israelites kind of longed for that sun when they were out in the middle of the desert walking around, because God knew they couldn't handle going from slave to Israel immediately. He knew that. So again, they wandered the desert for 40 years. That's a long time. And I get why they got frustrated. I get why they had some longings for, it was bad, but at least we knew what we had. And that's the problem here. And that's what I want us to see here is this tyranny of misperceptions, particularly for you guys that, for you guys that had a really tough childhood, which many of you do. You had a lot of trauma. You had a lot of childhood neglect. You had a lot of abandonment. As bad as all that is, it's like Dr. Vanderkolk talks about in his book, The Body Keeps the Score. He said he's seen 1,000 times where a child from a broken, abusive home will always want to go back when they get taken out for hospitalization or something. If they have the choice to either go back to what they know or to go to a family they don't know, they will always choose going back. It's just what we do. And we do the same thing as adults when we carry on our childhood shame, our toxic shame, and we never get past it. That's us having a tyranny of misperceptions about who we are, when the fact is that's not who we are. The person who believes in themselves, is self-actualized, has goals, has purpose, lives with gratitude, lives with meaning, has friends, has family connections that are healthy. That's who you really are. And that's our goal, is to go from the survival mode to a rich, full, meaningful life. And it's a long road. It's worth it, and it takes time. And so accept the fact that you're not perfect. Accept the fact you're not God. Accept the fact that probably in some ways you are not a good person. But the fact that you're worried about it and you want to get better tells us that you're not a bad person inherently. You in fact are a good person, and you want to get past this. So that's the reason for you to do recovery, is to get past that and to start to experience that rich, full, meaningful life. And we have to have, with faith, well, the one thing I just want to make sure we talk about today is that if we have to believe in who's offering something. We have to have enough faith in what they're telling us that we can get from this for us to accept that and to try to connect with that. And so that's what I hope we can get across here, is that you have enough faith to believe that God loves you, God created you, God has a plan for you, God's always working in our lives. Jesus is a living Messiah, omnipresent, all those things, which are hard to believe sometimes. But if you give yourself a chance, you might be able to start recovering and start letting go of these tyrannical misperceptions about you that aren't true. So you got to do the work. You have to get with people who can help you. Professionals, support groups like NorthStar are just so valuable. And again, I keep telling people this, I see recovery, and myself and all the others, we're healthier. We're getting there. There's people in there who are actually getting healthier. and their lives are getting better, and they're starting to enjoy life a little bit more. They're not prisoners to their addiction. They're set free in some ways. So that's the way you got to do it. Do your gratitudes every day. Um, be grateful for the things. And sometimes I always tell people to think about writing down a couple of gratitudes that are hard for you to be grateful for, right? Maybe some of the past abuse in your life, stuff like that. Because again, we keep talking about the way to overcome trauma is to talk about the trauma and its effects on you at a pace you can, and then figure out ways to assign good to that. So that's what we got to do. So I hope this has been a little bit helpful to you, to have enough faith to believe in a God who loves us, the God who created us, that we can overcome these tyrannical misperceptions that we hang on to because A, it's familiar to us, and B, it keeps us in our toxic shame world. And toxic shame, as bad as it is, it's what we know. So anyway, I hope you can start working on this. And again, so just again, reminders, we meet on 6:30s on Wednesday and Fridays here at Walnut Grove Baptist Church at 7046 Cold Harbor Road, Mechanicsville, Virginia. And if you're not local, always feel free to email me at csimpson@wgva.church if you ever want to, something you've heard or something you want thinking about or questions. And we just love to have you. And I'm glad that you're here joining me today on here, and love for you to share this if it helps other people. So let's close with the prayer of serenity. God, grant me the serenity to